item B, and it's too long to read. We'll let our financial guru go ahead and explain to us, but in essence, we're trying to find a way to pay the bills for an obligation that this council committed itself to, and you need to sell some bonds, right?
Yes, sir. This item, it relates to the debt issuance in the 89A and Granite Dells Parkway interchange. As you're all familiar, this project started a long time ago, about a year ago. We anticipated it getting going. It had several challenges or hurdles that it had to go over. But anyway, those have all been achieved. The contracts were finally awarded or accepted by council in November, and the project has actually broken ground. So we have a legal obligation to pay those amounts. This project has been in the budget for several years. It has always been in the budget as a debt issue. It was kind of the basis of the election in September for the extension of the tax to allow us to go out to a longer term so that the debt service would be more manageable each year in that fund, allowing us to continue with our road maintenance projects. Another question that comes up on this: why didn't we issue these bonds a year ago when the obligation or when the project was supposed to start? One of the reasons was the election hadn't happened. If we issued them at that time, it would have been a 5-year debt instead of a 20-year debt, which is what we're proposing today. If it was a 5-year debt, it would have paid off quicker, interest rate would have been lower, but again, you wouldn't have been able to do any other projects because the debt service would have consumed so much of the operating budget. Another issue with debt issues that has become a common practice of me and the city is because of the IRS regulations relating to arbitrage, which we really don't want to get into here, but anyway, it's a requirement of the IRS that tax-exempt bonds be sold and used within a time period of a year or 18 months, or there's an exception for 24 months, to avoid some additional liability the city could face to the federal government for those things. In light of that, the last 10 issues that we've done, we always wait for the project to actually get started, for ground to be turned, for the project to be underway before we issue the debt. An example would have been this project. If we issued debt a year ago, we would have used up 12 months of our time frame for the IRS before we could have even made a payment on it because of the legal issues that can be tied up with a construction project of the magnitude of these. Another question that comes up is why did we using the MPC, the City of Prescott's Municipal Property Corporation? It's not a requirement that we use the Municipal Property Corporation to issue debt. The city can issue debt on its own. We can pledge excise tax and do an excise tax pledge obligation to the market, and the market would consider those and buy those. It's not as accepted in the market as a bond, and to do it as a bond, we need to do it through the Municipal Property Corporation. That would make it a Municipal Property Corporation bond. It's still an excise tax pledge, but it comes out as a bond, which helps lower our interest rates on the debt issue, so it's the most cost-effective way for the city to borrow money. So that's why we use the Municipal Property Corporation instead of going directly to the market as an MPC, is because of the structure. The MPC did consider this item at a board meeting in December, and I believe I have Councilman Bob Recker, who has been on the MPC for 20 plus years. He was at that meeting. He's here today if you have any questions of the board. But the MPC did consider the project, and we looked at the structure. We discussed it in depth. I believe it was about an hour and a half meeting. So they looked at it and then unanimously approved the documents that you have in front of you. Again, just to quickly go over these documents, an MPC bond issue is essentially an excise tax pledge of the city, the sales tax pledge of the city, backed up with a lease arrangement, lease to or lease back from the MPC that covers the amount of the debt issue. The city doesn't pay any more than the cost of the debt service. It's just a legal structure that has come about for the issuance of these bonds. So with that in mind, there are a lot of documents that are included in this ordinance, which include the depository trust agreement, which is between the city, the MPC, and U.S. Bank, is our trustee. It's an extension of the Series 2007 MPC ground lease. Again, there's a lease involved in this for the legality of the debt issue. The ground lease in 2007 was tied to the expansion of the central garage, or the building of the new central garage and the expansion of the transfer station. We extended that ground lease for this issue, even though it's not really related to this project, but it works for the legal structure of these bonds. It's not pledging those lands or encumbering those lands or putting a lien on those lands. It's just part of the legal structure. What is pledged in this bond to the MPC and subsequently to the market is our excise tax, our sales taxes. And that's what is guaranteeing the bond.